want to uncover some of the signs to reassure us that the knowledge which we are acquiring is in fact taking us in the direction of Jannah. Because mankind will realize on the day of judgment that not every path of ilm knowledge will lead to paradise. Rather, some human beings, students of knowledge, attendees of halaqat, attendees of Friday sermons, people who had memorized the text and subscribed to courses, will be shocked on the day of standing when they see the angels of Allah Almighty being commanded to take them to a destination that they had not prepared for. A'udhu billah. And that is because the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam warned us that not every aspect of knowledge is beneficial. And thus Ibn Majah narrates in his Sunan on the authority of our mother Salama that the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam would say in his dua every single morning, before he finishes his Salatul Fajr, before he gives salam, he would say, Allahumma inni as'aluka ilman nafi'a wa rizqan tayyiba wa amalan mutaqabbala. Oh Allah, I ask you for knowledge that is beneficial. And I ask you for rizq, provisions that is good. And I ask you for actions of mine to be accepted by you. Every morning he is begging Allah for beneficial knowledge. And he would also say, as Ibn Majah narrates in his Sunan on the authority of Jabir, Salullah ta'ala ilman nafi'a wa ta'awwadhu billahi min ilmin la yanfa'. He said, always ask Allah, O Muslims, for knowledge that is beneficial, and seek protection in Allah from knowledge that is of no benefit. And therefore we ask the question, what are the signs that the knowledge which I am pursuing, you are pursuing, is taking us in the right direction? What is the sign that the knowledge that we are amassing on the daily basis is increasing the chances of us meeting a Lord who will be pleased with us on the day of judgment? What are the signs that our knowledge is not going to cause us fear and horror following the very first glance that we take at the face of the angel of death when our time is up? What are the signs that knowledge is nafi'? This is a realization that we need, dear brothers and sisters, before we pursue, before we memorize any more texts, before we attend any more Friday sermons, before we attend any other halaqah or deliver it. These are questions that must be answered. Otherwise, we may be exhausting ourselves for the wrong destination. What are the signs? They are many. Therefore, we will only be discussing 4 of them, perhaps the most famous of them, and perhaps the most important as well. The first of these signs, beneficial knowledge is that which brings about in the heart of people true khashya, fear of Allah Jalla Jalaluhu. This is undoubtedly the chief of all signs, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned this explicitly in the Quran, Surah Fatir. Allah said, إِنَّمَا يَخْشَى اللَّهَ مِنْ عِبَادِهِ الْعُلَمَاءِ. It is only the people of knowledge from amongst the slaves of Allah who truly fear Him. They recognized Him. They understand His divine names and majestic attributes. They have understanding of the halal and the haram and the seerah of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And thus their heart is filled with awe, hayba, fear, rahba, hope, raja in Allah Jalla Jalaluh. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, he would also say, لَيْسَ الْعِلْمُ بِكَثْرَةِ الرِّوَايَةِ إِنَّمَا الْعِلْمُ الْخَشِيَةِ. He said, knowledge is not about memorizing many narrations. Knowledge is the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Abdullah ibn Mas'ud would also say, كَفَى بِخَشْيَةِ اللَّهِ عِلْمًا وَكَفَى بِاغْتِرَارِ الْمَرْءِ جَهْلًا. Sufficient is the fear of Allah as a product of knowledge. That is enough. Sufficient is the fear of Allah as a product of knowledge. And sufficient is ightirar, self-deception, self-admiration as a product of ignorance. He said, dear brother, dear sister, if the knowledge that you are amassing on a weekly or a daily basis, may Allah bless you, is not restraining you from missing salah or delaying it, if your knowledge is not encouraging you to revisit your finances and your investments and your God-given hours, how you are investing those. If your knowledge is not preventing you from raising a bruising fist at your spouse, if your knowledge is not preventing you from answering back at your mother and father, then this is not the type of knowledge that will rescue you on the day of judgment. Knowledge is that voice that you constantly hear in your head, in your heart, in your soul, speaking to you. It never leaves you. Always advising you, rearranging your priorities, managing your actions, managing your reactions, knocking sense into our heads the moment we raise a hand to haram, or our eyes to haram, or our ears or wealth to haram. Knowledge screams at you. It says, what are you doing? Don't you fear Allah? Have shyness of Allah. Where is your haya? This is the benefit of knowledge. It is such a loyal advisor. It is such an honest friend. Never leaves you alone, taking you by the hand, introducing you to the majesty of Allah, reminding you of His divine names and His perfect attributes, so that you never consider doing a haram, and when you do, your knowledge says, wait. It screams at you and it stops you in your tracks. This is the purpose of knowledge. And if a person's knowledge is not doing that for him, whether it's an online desire or an offline desire, then it could be that you have fallen into one of the four categories that the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam was very afraid of. When he would say in his dua, as Muslim narrates on the authority of Zayd ibn Arqam, Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min ilmin la yanfa' wa min qalbin la yakhsha' wa min nafsin la tashba' wa min da'watin la yustajabu laha. He would say, oh Allah, I ask you to protect me from knowledge that doesn't benefit me. And I ask you to protect me from a heart that stays hard. And I ask you to protect me from having desires that never fill. And I ask you to protect me from a dua that you do not answer. A person whose knowledge does not cause him to fear Allah and change his life, his knowledge is of no use. His heart is hard. His desires will not be filled, and his dua will hardly ever be answered. And how beautiful therefore were the words of Abdul A'la al-Tamimi, as he said, Man utiya min al-ilmi ma la yubkihi, Man utiya min al-ilmi ma la yubkihi, فخليق أن لا يكون قد أوتي علما نافعا. لأن الله عز وجل قال في نعت العلماء ويخرون للأذقان يبكون ويزيدهم خشوعا. He said, whoever gains knowledge that does not cause him to cry over himself, then this is a person who has not gained beneficial knowledge. And that is because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the Quran, in description of the people of knowledge, He said they fall to their faces crying when they hear the Quran being recited, and it increases them in humility. They cry. Thus your knowledge may be growing, but is it causing you to grow? This is the first, dear brother, dear sister, major sign of beneficial knowledge, taking to Jannah, or knowledge that is taking to another destination. It's increasing you in the fear of Allah Jalla Jalaluhu. The second sign, beneficial knowledge, dear brother, dear sister, is that which commands application there and then. It encourages you to do something about it immediately, without any delay. Imam Ahmad rahimahullah, he said, ما كتبت حديثا عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم إلا وقد عملت به. I have not written and memorized any of the narrations of the Prophet Muhammad صلى الله عليه وسلم except after I first apply it. And they didn't memorize one or two ahadith like me and others perhaps. They memorized hundreds of thousands. Imam Ahmad memorized alf. 1 million narrations he had memorized. 1 million narrations. How many did he apply therefore? All of them perhaps. News came to Ahmad that the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam engaged in hijama, cupping therapy, and he gave Abu Taybah, the cupping therapist, 1 dinar. So Imam Ahmad engaged in cupping and he gave the therapist 1 dinar. News came to Ahmad rahmatullahi alayhi that the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam hid in the cave when he was escaping Mecca for 3 days. So Imam Ahmad found the cave and stayed within it for 3 days. This was the purpose of knowledge according to them, immediate application. How beautiful were the words of Al-Hasan al-Basri, who said, كان الرجل إذا طلب العلم لم يلبث أن يرى ذلك في بصره ولسانه ويده وصلاته وتخشعه وزهده. He said a person in the past, when he used to begin a path of knowledge, immediately you would see the influence of knowledge upon his eyes, upon his speech, upon his actions, upon his salah, upon his humility, upon his minimalism and rejection of dunya. La ilaha illallah. This was the purpose of knowledge according to them. Immediate application, not with the intention of teaching it to others, teaching it to himself, to save himself, to reform himself before anybody else. Abu Qilaba said to Ayyub al-Sikhtiyani, إذا أحدث الله لك علما فأحدث له عبادة ولا يكن همك أن تحدث به. He said, Ayyub, if Allah Almighty gives you a new bit of knowledge, then make sure you introduce for it a new bit of worship. And do not make your main intention in life to teach that knowledge to others. Your main intention is to take care of yourself, to save yourself. Sufyan ibn Uyayna, he said, إذا كان نهاري نهار سفيه وليلي ليل جاهل فأي شيء أصنع في علمي الذي كتبته. He said, if I was to spend my daylight hours acting like a fool and spending my night hours acting like an ignorant person, then what is the purpose of the knowledge that I am amassing? What is the purpose of it? It is a scary observation. Those brothers and sisters who have an interest in Islamic knowledge, but you see how they behave during the day and night, and sometimes it is below average. It is not befitting for them. Excessively socializing, endlessly, recreational activities, addicted to the games console, responding to desires in ways that don't befit a student of knowledge, or perhaps just spending hours upon hours of argumentation, debate, a political matter that has no real application in our lives, hours and hours. And this is why the Messenger said, alayhi salatu wasalam, as Imam al-Tirmidhi narrates in his Jami' on the authority of Abi Umama, مَا ضَلَّ قَوْمٌ بَعْدَ هُدَى كَانُوا عَلَيْهِ إِلَّا أُوتُوا الْجَدَلِ. Any people who end up going astray after the guidance Allah had given them, you find that they are very argumentative. Very argumentative, a sign that a person is astray. If Allah wants good for you and me, dear brother, dear sister, He will open up for you the doors of action, and He will close for you the doors of jadal, argumentation. But if Allah wants evil for a person, He will close for him the doors of action. It becomes boring, doesn't want to do it, can't be bothered. And He will open up for him the doors of jadal, argumentation. As Ma'ruf al-Karfi, as Ma'ruf al-Karhi rahimahullah, he said. These are people who found ibadah burdensome. Da'wah is heavy. Gaining knowledge, boring. They found it tough. So they occupied themselves with jadal, argumentation instead. And this is the sunnah, the way of Allah in the universe. Any person who leaves that which is great, Allah will replace him with that which is lesser than it. These are two signs, dear brothers and sisters, for knowledge that is of true benefit. Number one, it brings about fear, khashya of Allah Jalla Jalaluhu. Fear that you feel within you. And the second of this beneficial knowledge is that it brings about immediate action. You see the change in your reflection, in your speech and your dress and your ibadah. As for the remaining two signs, we will discuss them in the second part of the khutbah. Wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Alhamdulillahi wahdahu wa salatu wa salam ala man la nabiyya ba'dahu wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. The third sign that knowledge is of benefit and will take a person insha'Allah to Jannah is that it produces within this person a genuine sense of humility that is real. This person, when offered two choices, will always take the safer of the two options. This person not only stays away from the haram, but this person will also stay away from the doubtful grey areas of Islam as well. This person, because of his knowledge that has brought about humility, is also not afraid to say, La adri, sorry, I don't know the answer to your question. He's confident to say that because he fears Allah, he has humility. Abdul Rahman ibn Abi Layla, he said, أدركت في هذا المسجد 20 و100 من صحابة رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ما منهم من محدث إلا ود أن أخاه كفاه الحديث وما منهم من مفت إلا ود أن أخاه كفاه الفتية. He said, I have met in this very mosque of ours no less than 120 companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And every single one of them who had knowledge wished that his brother would spare him the duty of teaching and to spare him the duty of responding to people's questions. They were not rushing to answer questions. They were afraid of saying halal and haram. They were pushing people away from them. Listen to the description of Ibn Sirin, the Tabi'i. They said that whenever he would be asked about a question of halal or haram, تغير لونه وتبدل حتى كأنه ليس الذي كان. His color would change, his demeanor would alter, and it would become as if it's a different personality that we previously knew. He was afraid to give an answer on behalf of Allah and His Messenger. Ata ibn Abi Rabah, he said, I have met people whom when they would be asked a question of halal and haram, their bodies would begin to shake, fearing that they will say something that will displease Allah Jalla Jalaluhu. كان مالك إذا سئل في المسائل كأنه واقف بين الجنة والنار. They said whenever Imam Malik would be asked about a question of halal and haram, he would look like he was a man who was standing between paradise and hell. La ilaha illallah. Afraid. Knowledge that brought about humility, fear of Allah. They were not scared at all to say, La adri, I have no knowledge. I have no knowledge. Umayr ibn Sa'id, he said, I went to Alqamah to ask him a question. Alqamah, he said to me, go to Abidah al-Aslami. So I went to Abidah al-Aslami. I said to him, this is my question. He said to me, go and ask Alqamah. He said, Alqamah sent me to you. He said, okay, go ask Masruq ibn al-Ajda'. So I went to Masruq ibn al-Ajda'. I asked him the question. He said, please don't ask me. These are scholars. He said, please don't ask me. Go to Alqamah. He said, I went to Alqamah. Alqamah sent me to Abid al-Aslami, and then Abid al-Aslami sent me to you. He said, go to Abdul Rahman ibn Abi Layla. So I went to Abdul Rahman ibn Abi Layla. فَكَرِهَ السُّؤَالِ. He didn't want to answer. So I went back to Alqamah, the very first person I approached. I said to him, I can't find an answer. He said to me, كَانَ يُقَالُ أَجْرَأُ الْقَوْمِ عَلَى الْفُتْيَا أَدْنَاهُمْ عِلْمًا. He said, the scholars of Islam, they say that those who are quickest to give answers to questions, they are the least of all people in knowledge. This is the third sign that knowledge is of benefit. It produces real humility. You don't see yourself as great. Rather, you are afraid. You push away attention from yourself. You don't want to be the signpost of people to answer the question. You're not always the first to speak in the majalis, in the gatherings. You prefer to listen. You prefer to benefit. And you are scared of signing on behalf of Allah and His Messenger. This is the third sign. As for the fourth, and we will conclude with this, beneficial knowledge, dear brother, dear sister, may Allah Almighty teach us, is that knowledge that causes you to run away from fame. It causes you to run away from every type of attention. You fear the limelight. You fear the praise and admiration of people. Because you realize that an atom's weight of ujub, self-admiration, can cause mountains of good deeds to come crashing down on the day of judgment. So the people of beneficial knowledge, they run away from fame. And how beautiful therefore was the dua of Ibn Muhayriz, who would say, Allahumma inni as'aluka dhikran khamila. Oh Allah, I ask you to give me a dull reputation. Oh Allah, I ask you to give me a dull reputation. They were afraid. When the uncle of Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal went to visit him, he saw Imam Ahmad with his hand on his cheek, and he was in a clear state of misery and sadness. He said to him, Ma bik? What is wrong with you, O Imam? Imam Ahmad raised his head to him. He said, Ya am, tuba liman akhman Allahu dhikrah. He said to him, Oh my uncle, how blessed, how lucky, how fortunate is a person whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala dulls his reputation. Ahmad was so famous at the time and he was scared. How lucky is a person whose reputation is dull. And Ahmad, he said, I wish that I could live in a valley in Mecca, away from the people. حيث لا يعرفونني قد بليت بالشهرة إني أتمنى الموت صباحا ومساء. I want to be far away from the people, living in a valley in Mecca somewhere where nobody will know who I am. I have been afflicted with fame. I have been afflicted with fame, and so I am asking Allah to cause me to die every morning and every evening. Ya Allah. Ayyub al-Sikhtiyani, he walked past a gathering. He said, Assalamu alaikum. And they said, Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. They praised him. This is the Imam. So he knew that they had recognized him. So he said, كَأَنَّ ذَلِكَ نِقْمَةً كَأَنَّ ذَلِكَ نِقْمَةً. It's as if Allah is punishing me. It's as if Allah is punishing me. مَا صَدَقَ اللَّهَ عَبْدٌ أَحَبَّ الشُّهْرَةِ. Ibrahim ibn Adham, he said, any man who loves fame has not been true to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They didn't want VIP treatment. They didn't want seats reserved at the front for them. They didn't expect honorariums in activities and events. They didn't expect any type of food or special drink. They didn't expect khidmah, service. They didn't want people to give them big titles, especially when they know they don't deserve that title. Their favorite title in life is the name that their father gave them. They don't want anything else. They run away from fame. In fact, you may be amazed to know that the people of our past, when their halaqah, their circle of knowledge would grow, they would get up and leave. Khalid ibn Ma'dan from the Tabi'een, he would be teaching, but when he sees people growing in number in his halaqah, his study circle, he would get up and walk away, fearing fame. Abu al-Aliyah, his halaqah consisted of around 1 or 2 people. If they became 3, he would get up and leave. Imagine. Abu Bakr ibn Ayyash, they asked him, كم رأيت أكثر ما رأيت في مجلس إبراهيم النخعي. How many people did you see at the most in the halaqah of Imam Ibrahim al-Nakha'i? He said 4 or 5 at the most. Otherwise he would get up and walk away. Is this how you behave, dear brother, when you are invited to a gathering to teach? How do you feel when it's only 20 people or 10 people who turn up, or just 5 perhaps? How would you feel if nobody turned up? Does it bother you? Ya akhi, thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He has dulled for you your reputation. And ask Him to keep it that way. Ya Rabbi, make me say the greatest of people in your eyes and dull my reputation here in dunya. Thank Allah that the people around you are few, and so your mistakes will not be widespread. Thank Allah that your iman and your sincerity is guarded. Thank Allah that your good deeds are safer than others from collapsing on the day of judgment. It's not about the Facebook post, dear brothers and sisters. It's not about the retweets. It's not about the hundreds and thousands of followers on social media. We are bringing fame to ourselves. People before us didn't do that. So Allah rewarded them. We're still talking about them today. What social media did they have? La ilaha illallah. These, dear brothers and sisters, are some of the signs of beneficial knowledge. As we have therefore found out, beneficial knowledge that takes to Jannah breaks a person. It makes him great in the eyes of Allah, but very small in his own eyes. It allows him to accept advice. He has a rahmah upon others when giving them advice. Doesn't jump to conclusions. It makes him fear Allah. A voice that speaks to him when he's about to disobey Him. These are some of the signs of beneficial knowledge, because we have discovered today that not every path of knowledge will lead to Jannah.